I'm Pamela Marr, the board liaisons to the Social Responsibility, Music, and Worship Committees. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation. We are a religious community who commit ourselves to diversity. We hope to nourish human differences, those of gender, race, age, ability, sexual orientation, political views, culture, class, and religious belief. Welcome to all who treasure freedom of conscience and the search for truth. We promise to do our best to provide you a spiritual home. We extend a special welcome to our visitors today. We hope you follow our UUC Facebook page and stay tuned for other events such as Wonderful Wednesdays and Sunday morning meditation. There are religious exploration classes for adults and small groups for support and interest, like book club. Also, families can follow our UUC Religious Exploration Facebook page. There are religious exploration classes for 4K through 9th grade and youth group every Wednesday online for middle school and high school. We're so glad you joined us today.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Good morning. I'm assuming I'm here. I see Pam. My name is Phil Swanhorst, and I want to report on what the Pledge Committee has achieved so far. Just briefly, I want to say, well, last week I was one of the last ones to talk, and this week I'm one of the first ones. You get to hear from people that have only been members a short time with your congregation, and other ones for 38 years. Like last year, you heard from me and an individual that was here for 38 years with your congregation. And variety's the spice. It's just wonderful. It's a thing we've done with our congregation. We do short-term stuff and we've done long-term stuff, like the community table. We just heard before church in chatting from Reverend Virginia that the community's table started there, and that's been here for decades. And the Hmong refugee program, that was 20, 30 years ago. This church helped a lot with that program. And now we're helping with the Afghan refugee, another one that's just starting again. And that's what's so wonderful with the people and the congregation I have joined. And I am so proud to announce that we are well on our way to achieving our goal of getting to our pledge. So far, we are a third of the way there, and we're only a third of the way through our pledge season. So it's great, it's wonderful. We have raised over $87,000 so far in pledges. Our goal is to get to 261,000. So we're a third of the way, 33% of the way of achieving it. And I am so proud and so happy and so thankful to know that we will achieve it, because the people of this congregation know from a long time ago to just now what it takes to make this pledge achievable. And I thank you very much.
Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Eau Claire. I'm the Reverend Virginia Wolf, Minister Emerita of this congregation, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. This morning we're going to explore individualism as both a kind of salvation and as a sickness. Let's begin with how it can save one's own life by reading Mary Oliver's The Journey. One day, you finally knew what you had to do and began, though their melancholy was terrible. It was late enough and a wild night, and the road full of branches and stones, and little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. Come, let us worship.
It is time for our chalice lighting, and we can recite these words in unison by Betsy Dar. May the light of this chalice give light and warmth to our community when we are joyful and when we despair, and may the warmth spread from our circle to wider and wider circles until we know they belong to the one circle of life.
I'll be reading Maya Angelou's Still I Rise for you this morning. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laughed like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I am a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
And now it's time for our giving. And with gratitude and abundance in our lives, we give to help people in need and to support the work of this congregation. The 50-50 Share the Plate recipient for December is it's the free clinic, the free health clinic. And checks can be mailed to UUC at 421 South Farwell Street, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 54701. Donated online or on-site donations can be made in the donation box in the gathering room. And now we will have our music for giving. Hi, and now it's time for a story for all ages, and it's called Hang On to Your Ego from the blog Integral Options Cafe by Tanisaro Biku. King Pasandai is in a tender moment with his favorite consort, Queen Malika, asks her, "Is there anyone you love more than yourself?" He's anticipating, of course, that she'll answer, "Yes, Your Majesty, you." And it's easy to see where a B movie script would go from here, but this is the Pali canon, and Queen Malika is no ordinary queen. She answers, "No, Your Majesty, there isn't." "And how about you? Is there anyone you love more than yourself?" The king, forced into an honest answer, has to admit, "No, there's not." Later, he reports this conversation to the Buddha, who responds, "Searching all directions with one's awareness, one finds no one dearer than oneself." In the same way, others are fiercely dear to themselves, so one should not hurt others if one loves oneself.
Looking back, I can truthfully say that Mary Oliver's The Journey, and to a lesser extent Maya Angelou's Still I Rise, describe my life as a young adult. Everything in my life conspired to make me want to get away from my childhood home. Born the oldest child, I was my parents' delight for over 2 years, and then came 3 siblings in the next 3 years. My brother especially challenged my specialness, but he was enough younger that I could perform better at sports, at least for a while, than he did, and I always did better in school. Still, he was the only boy in the family with 3 girls, and I never overcame my parents' partiality for him, try as I might. Perhaps this situation explains why I've never fit into the traditional female role. In any case, I grew up wanting to be a boy or to be allowed to engage in what were then seen as male activities. Then after I reached puberty, my crushes were on girls. And in high school, I excelled in sciences. I became a ham radio operator and a lieutenant in the Civil Air Patrol, and graduated valedictorian, winning several scholarships to the University of Kansas. I was very competitive, and I saw myself as my culture did, as an outlier, as a misfit. My nickname was the Brain, which I experienced both as a compliment and as a put down. Some part of who I was then was undoubtedly due to genetics. There was just something in me that moved me to be different, to love learning, to see the limits of my mother's and other women's lives, to resist following in their footsteps, and to be attracted to women. There was also an alcoholic father and his abuses that I yearned to leave behind. I wanted a different life, one that affirmed me as I saw myself, as an individual. I'm not trying to debate nature-nurture here, My point is that I defined myself in opposition to societal norms at a very young age and continued to do so for much of my life. Had I been born in a culture like that of many Asian or South American countries, my choices would have been much more difficult or even impossible. Even in the United States in the 1950s, they weren't easy. But as the country has become more supportive of the rights of women, homosexuals, and other minorities, it has become more easy to be me. So I'm very glad that the US has become as individualistic as it has. But individualism costs us. To go against the grain is to experience abrasion. Others react to us negatively. They exclude, ignore, judge, and vilify, and we may internalize their reactions and turn them against ourselves. As we leave behind all that we've known and forge a new life, we're often very lonely, confused, and even lost. So one cost of individualism is loneliness or isolation, the absence of supportive, nurturing relationships. Studies have shown that, quote, people who had strong individualistic values and beliefs within an individualistic culture have smaller social support networks, lower emotional competence, lower intentions to seek help from a variety of sources, and poorer mental health, end quote. From a societal point of view, the cost is a lack of social cohesion. If it is everyone for themselves, then who cares about the functioning of a society, the protection of the vulnerable, the maintenance of infrastructure, the provision of services such as those provided by the police and fire departments? One study entitled Individualistic Values Are Related to an Increase in the Outbreak of Infectious Diseases explores how individualism literally makes us sick. Obviously, this study is very relevant to our times and to our topic. Mask wearing and social distancing, science has shown, prevent the spread of COVID-19. But a good share of the US population has protested that these are abridgments of their individual freedom. Once upon a time, seatbelts were similarly understood. Another precious freedom in this country is the right to bear arms, and any infringement of this freedom is seen as a violation of individual rights, despite the fact that, quote, compared to 22 other high-income nations, the US gun-related homicide rate is 25 times higher, end quote. In all of these examples, individuals see their rights as more important than the rights of others. There needs to be mask-free, close to people, free of seatbelts, and in possession of guns, supersede the rights of others to be safe from disease, bodies thrown from cars during accidents, and gun violence. Many see these beliefs and actions as individualism gone wrong, making America sick. Perhaps it's more apt to see them as an always potential result of individualism. In Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville defined individualism as, quote, a mature and calm feeling which disposes each member of the community to sever himself from the mass of his fellow creatures and to draw apart from his family, with his family and his friends, so that after he has thus formed a little circle of his own, he willingly leaves society at large to itself, end quote. Implicit in individualism, in other words, is the possibility that concern for the welfare of the self will lead one to disregard the welfare of society. Certainly, my drive to be and to save myself involved disregarding and going against societal norms and my parents' wishes, making them anxious and sad. Similarly, we can see in those who refuse to wear masks and social distance the defiance of a government which they feel has let them down. Many are people who have no financial reserves, who lost their jobs during the pandemic, who feel as if those in power view them as the deplorables, and who see the government as discounting them. So they reject the command to take precautions against the virus, and feeling alone and unprotected, they hang on to their guns. Indeed, all the rights I've sought as a woman and a lesbian make these people frightened and disturbed. To see women as more like men upsets their age-old understanding of women as pure or angelic and as weak, not able to function in the world without men's protection. To see lesbians as being able to form relationships without men only furthers the discomfort and also strikes at the heart of their understanding of marriage as being between one woman and one man, who is, of course, the head of the household and therefore in charge. Both women's and gay liberation threaten these men's understanding of themselves. Who are they in a world that recognizes women and family so differently? Also, for some of these men and for traditional women as well, the civil rights movement displaces their view of who they are as white people, people who define themselves as worthwhile because they're white. This certainly helps us to see why they continue to be racist.
Is there something else I can help with?
Certainly, individualism has encouraged the freedom and flourishing of individuals who differ from the norm. But neither the freedom nor the flourishing has been perfect. It is rather an ongoing process, still met with resistance by conservatives who prefer traditional roles. But in breaking down social norms, individualism has also threatened social cohesion. The threat is very apparent today in our sharp divisions, our hatred of those who differ from us. Those who refuse to take precautions against the pandemic horrify those of us on the left as they are horrified by our destruction of traditions. When it's all about me, my pleasure, my comfort, my freedom, then there's no concern for other people, and we've lost the glue that holds us together. What is this glue? I believe that religion has been the glue, providing a set of values that bound a people together. But of course, in the past, and still in some circles today, religion has reflected white, patriarchal, heterosexual values and norms and required conformity to them. But since the mid-20th century, theological scholars have examined the relationship between religion and the oppression of people who don't conform. And much of this scholarship has proposed new readings of sacred texts. Emphasis has shifted to understanding God as all-loving, to God's being female or male, or male and female, or both. To God's being of all colors or none, and to seeing the earth and all of its inhabitants as an image of God and goodness to be nurtured by humans. This paradigm shift in the Abrahamic traditions rests at least to some extent on scientific discoveries about the nature of reality. Quantum mechanics, the theory of relativity, and environmentalism have shown that we are not isolated individuals. Connection, not separation, is the nature of reality. Energy and matter are fundamentally interchangeable. At the tiniest level of reality, We can only determine the probability of a photon's being a wave or a particle. Every living being in the ecosystem depends on every other living being. Even the atoms in our very bodies form an ecosystem. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm in the seventh principle, there is an interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. My own life journey reflects this paradigm shift. Affirming myself, I found a partner, raised children, created a family, all of which supported who I am. But I also reached out to Unitarian Universalism to find affirmation and meaning in my life. I found a community that supported who I was, and I sought in various ways to change the broader culture to be affirming. My network constantly expanded to include new people and groups. Along with many others, I work for social change. At first, I was largely motivated by my own personal interest, but increasingly self-love became love of others. I felt my connections, largely due to my experience of beloved community in my family, my local church, and my Buddhist Sangha, but also in the broader culture. My Buddhist meditation practice deepened this sense of connection, observing the arising and falling away of reality, the way in which each of us reflects everyone and everything in our lives, the absence of any separate, independent, unchanging, eternal me. I came to understand how thoroughly I'm really a we. I experience the way I'm a part of everything, and I see that connected, I'm happy, and separate, I'm lonely and miserable. My whole life changed and is changing because of these insights and experiences. With Walt Whitman in Song of Myself, quote, I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you, end quote. And as he says toward the end of the poem, quote, I am large, I contain multitudes, end quote. This may sound boastful and even egotistical, but I believe Whitman conveys a true understanding of the self as a reflection of everything, infinitely connected even to each single blade of grass. Or as Thich Nhat Hanh says in The Miracle of Mindfulness, quote, to see one in all and all in one is to break through the great barrier which narrows one's perception of reality, a barrier which Buddhism calls the attachment to the false view of self, end quote. Whereas the Buddha says in the story that we heard today, one should not hurt others if one loves oneself. Finally, the apparent conflict between individualism and community breaks down. The tension arises from our very dualistic perception of reality in the Western world. Self and society, male and female, straight and queer, young and old, white and black, human and animal, soul and body, and so forth and so on. We need a religion, a vision of reality that breaks down this old tendency to understand by dividing things up into opposites, that comprehends thoroughly and deeply our interdependence, our oneness. We are never independent of the web of connections that sustains our lives. Even in defining ourselves in opposition to our families and societies, we reflect the powerful influence upon us, their powerful influence. Without them, we'd have nothing to oppose, no reason to search for a better life, a better understanding, a better society, a better religion. They are truly gifts, the motivation for our changing and growing. When I look back over my whole life now, I can love and appreciate my parents and my young adulthood and the society in which I grew up. It was difficult. But now I understand the fear and suffering my resistance caused my parents. I can feel their confusion and mistrust of the path I chose. I know they loved me and only wanted me to be safe. Obviously, I believe they were mistaken, but my anger and despair over their attempts to restrain me no longer exist. Furthermore, I treasure all that they gave me that enabled me to find a new path. My dad's love of play and laughter, his curiosity about everything, especially science, my mom's tenacity and strength. She kept us together, healthy, fed, clothed, and studious. She was a bit of a tiger. Then, too, there was her very intelligent mind, her constant reading and love of drama, her dreams while young of going to college as an English major. I could go on, but surely my point is clear. Separating from my past freed me to find a new life, but my connections with my past made all my discoveries possible. My suffering in response to their need to restrict my freedom taught me the value of that freedom, and it inspired me to work that others might be free. Most important of all, I see now that I was always much more a we than an I. In saying this, I don't mean to deny the inherent worth and dignity of every strand of the web, arising from and falling back into the interdependence of existence. Each of us expresses some unique features of reality. Each needs to be free and to flourish. But each is ultimately a reflection of the whole and deeply interconnected. So any suffering or joy is not mine or yours, but ours. And as long as anyone suffers, we all suffer. And if I truly love myself, I love all of you and would not want you to suffer. Clearly, individualism that sees only the one results in a small, stifling, grasping, lonely reality that promotes sickness, whereas individualism that sees the oneness results in a big, open, loving, relational reality that promotes freedom and flourishing for all. May we come to internalize ever more clearly and thoroughly that every living being is intimately and intricately connected, and that our survival as a species and a country depends on our living by a value system that reflects this deep knowing. May we do what we can to affirm and promote such knowing and living. Amen.
Hi, it's time to extinguish the chalice today. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Elizabeth Selly Jones.
Let's close with the words of Mary Oliver's The Wild Geese. Here she captures the essence of interdependence, the connecting power and salvation of love. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, No matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Go in peace, go in love.